Okay, good evening, everyone. My name is David Cashman. I'm with SEB Housing, and this is the lottery for the 3 affordable 3-bedroom units at Medfield, Meadows. Let me just give you a little bit of background on the number of households that applied and the waiting lists, and then we'll get into the drawing. Before I go any further, let me just ask, are there any households who do not know or who forgot their lottery application numbers? If you know it, you don't need to tell me. You can just, you don't need to say anything. But if you don't know it or you forgot, please let me know and I can look it up for you. Everyone's good? Seems like? Okay, great. So everyone knows their number. So as I said, there are 3 homes that this is the lottery for. As you may know, there is a local preference on one of the waiting lists. There's going to be 2 different waiting lists. There is a local preference that applies to 2 of the units, but not to the other unit. Now, there were 4 households in total who indicated they qualified for local preference. Those households will get priority as compared to other households of the same type, okay? As compared to households of the same type. But remember that households who are type 3 will be on the tops of the waiting list, and all type 3 households will be above all type 2 households, regardless whether you have local preference or not. And that's because the program requires that priority be given to households who are appropriately sized for the units. In this case, type 3 households are considered appropriately sized for the 3-bedroom units. So there's going to be 2 waiting lists. There'll be the local preference waiting list. That's for 2 units, 30 applicants, 4 households indicated local preference, 24 households are type 3 households, and 6 households are type 2 households. Then there's going to be the general pool waiting list for the other 3-bedroom unit. It's going to be all the same 30 applicants will also be on that list, okay? Every household who's watching this, who's in this lottery, you will be on both waiting lists. I know that seems a little counterintuitive, but that's how it works. That's not an accident. So when I send you the waiting list, you're going to find yourself on both sides of the ledger, on the general waiting list and the local list. And that is on purpose. Let me pause right there. I see there's a question from Chris. Did not get your lottery application number. Let me see, Chris. And was the application under your name, Chris? Chris Andanov. A016. A016, Chris, that's your number. All right. Rob J. Rob J. And Rob J. What name did you apply under so that I can search for it? Because I'm not seeing Rob J. Alzira. A006. Alzira, you're A.006. Okay, these were emailed to people. Let's see here. So I'm sorry, I'm looking at the next question. Sauvelier Saint Jean. Sorry, that's probably bad pronunciation. Sauvelier, you are A.026. A.026. Okay, so for the lottery drawings, there's going to be 2 drawings. The first drawing will be the 4 local preference households. That's these. I'll pick them out one by one. I'll hold the numbers up to the screen as I go, and I'll call them out so you can see. Following that, I will put those numbers in with all of the other households who were not local preference. So all 30 households will be in the second drawing. And then I'll do the same thing. I'll pick them out one by one. I'll hold the application numbers up so you can see them as I go. Now remember, as you're watching this, you may be sitting there wondering, what exactly does this mean? I was picked first. Does that mean I'm number one? I was picked last. Does that mean I'm last? And the answer is not necessarily. I don't know. I won't know until a few hours from now when I have time to sort the results onto the waiting list, okay? Remember, the waiting lists are what determine the order of priority that households will get to move forward in the next step. So everyone, if you have a lottery application number, you're in the lottery, you'll be on both waiting lists. Everyone will have a position on a waiting list. The waiting list won't be determined until later this evening. I will then email them to you. And so keep an eye out on your email. And that should go out in the next few hours. If there were any households who didn't provide an email, I will send it via snail mail to you, and you'll get it in a few days. But the waiting lists are what tell you the order of priority moving forward. Okay, so you don't really know where you stand until you get that from me in a few hours, or if you don't have email, a few days. Okay. Now, as you're watching this, is it generally better to be picked sooner rather than later? Yes, it is. It is generally better. But again, when I'm picking households out, I don't know, you don't know if that number has local preference. We don't know if they're a type 2 household or a type 3 household. So you have to wait to get the waiting list from me before we know where everyone stands. And those waiting lists won't have your names. They'll just have your lottery application numbers on them. So you just find your lottery application number, and that's how you know where you are. Now, you will notice on the waiting list, some of the households will be highlighted in green. Other households are not. The households who are highlighted in green are the households who are going to be invited forward in the next step of this process, which is to submit all of the income and asset documentation that you didn't have to submit with your lottery application. Hopefully that doesn't sound like new news to you. Hopefully you've read that, you've anticipated that, and better yet, maybe you already even have a file ready to go, and you've started to collect the income and asset documentation that may be needed if you do get called to move forward. Okay, because remember, when you submitted your lottery application, you filled out the application, but you didn't have to provide your taxes, you didn't have to provide pay stubs, W-2s, bank statements, all of those other things that demonstrate your eligibility. But if you are one of these households who's highlighted in green on the waiting list that I'm going to send tonight, then you're going to be invited forward to the next step, which is to submit all of that documentation. Now, I do want to say, there are going to be more households highlighted in green than there are units. There are only 3 units. There will be probably 9 households highlighted in green. Now, you may say, why is SEB inviting 9 households if there are only 3 units? And the reason for that is because in our experience, typically we need to invite more households forward than there are units to fill all of those units. Maybe that's because a household indicated they made $70,000 on their application. When we look at all their income and asset documentation, they make $85,000. They forgot to disclose a couple things, and maybe that makes them ineligible. Or maybe their life circumstances change and they decide they don't want to move forward at this opportunity, or they decide they want to live elsewhere, or they don't want to move at all, or many of the other things that can happen. But the point is, in our experience, not every time, you can't, in our experience, you don't invite 3 households and fill 3 units. It's possible that that's what will happen. It's more often the case that's not what happens. And so if you are one of the households that's lower on the waiting list but is in green, that the fact that you're invited forward is not a guarantee of the opportunity to purchase a unit if one of the households ahead of you ends up purchasing the last unit that's available on that list. Okay, so just keep that in mind. That'll be in the notices that are communicated to you after the lottery. And so hopefully that just gives you some sense of why we're inviting more households than there are units. There will be time limits associated with that. I'm going to have to take a quick time out. I'm really sorry. I have a child care issue. I am home with my 2-year-old unexpectedly. Give me just a moment. I will be right back. I'm so sorry. Hold on. Nori? Okay, I'm really sorry about that. Again, unexpected, and I'm home with a 2-year-old, so just want to make sure that she was okay. So, okay, so we're going to do the drawing, and there was a question from Melissa. Will a third lottery drawing be required for this lottery? As the info pack mentioned, could be the case. No, because there were 2 of the 4 local preference households were already minority, so we don't need to have a third drawing to equal out the number of minority households in the local preference drawing. Etumli, family first, no worries. Okay. Not totally sure I understand that question. If it's a question, maybe you could try rephrasing it. I'm just not totally sure I understand the question. Okay, so yeah, the next steps, again, for households in green, we'll be reaching out to invite you to move forward and submitting the documents, the income, asset, and tax documents to show eligibility. And just keep in mind, folks, after we've done a review, we'll be in communication with you. There'll probably be some back and forth. We may need additional documents from you. Maybe you give us everything, but we'll let you know if there's other documents that are needed. You'll have to go get those. There will be time limits involved, okay, for obvious reasons. Everyone wants to keep this process moving forward. Households have had some time now with the requirements guide that we sent with your lottery application number that told you what documents you would have to submit. So hopefully you've looked at that and started to prepare some of those things if you do get invited forward. But if you are one of those top households, just keep in mind that there will be time limits involved in submitting all of the required documentation. So please pay attention to those. It'd be obviously unfortunate if you lost out on your opportunity because you didn't get things in time. Okay, and then if you are eligible, we need to get final approval from the monitoring agent. Once we get that, then you could move forward in the next step in the process, which is to start coordinating with the sales team to reserve the available units. Okay, so there will be other players involved from the sales team, but not for another month or 5 or 6 weeks. And we will give you further instructions at that time. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and do the local preference drawing. Here are the 4 local preference numbers. I'm putting them in the lottery box. Okay, very fancy. Our lottery box. I've pre-shuffled them a little bit, but I'm just mixing them up a little bit more here. First number is A.007. Next number is A.027. Next number is A.015. And then finally, A.014. A.014. All right, so that was the local preference drawing. Very quick. I know it was only the 4 lottery numbers qualified for local preference. I'm adding those back in with the other 26. So now I have all 30 households who applied. Again, I've already shuffled these up a little bit. Just going to cut them a little bit more, putting them in the box, shake them up. All right. This is the general drawing, okay? This is going to be all 30 households who were in the lottery. A.025. A.020. A.010. A.030. A.027. A.022. A.006. A009. A013. A029. A012. A023. A019. A015. A021. A001. A005. A011. A024. A007. A018. A028. A004. Coming up on the 24th number to be picked. A016. A017. A003. A002. A026. A014. A008. All right. So those were the 30 households in the general drawing. Okay. Again, everyone's sitting there, I'm sure, wondering, what does that mean exactly? The answer is none of us know exactly what that means right now. I mean, I suppose maybe if you're a type 3 local preference household who was drawn first in the local drawing, then yeah, you're going to be number one on the local list. But I haven't made the list yet. So kind of barring that example, I think most people watching don't know exactly what it means, but just sit tight. I'll send you an email in a few hours with the waiting list. Just remember, oh, I don't think I mentioned, my last, it's new construction. I think things, can change quickly, but last I had heard the first unit was going to be ready in February, the next unit in June, and then the final unit in the fall. You should discuss that if you're a household who gets to move forward and you have an opportunity to purchase one of these units. Obviously that's a discussion you can have with the sales team, and they can provide you further information. I'm sure you'll want to look at pictures and floor plans and stuff if you haven't already. When it's your turn, if you're one of the households who does get to move forward, you can select from any of the available units, okay? And then the households who are after you who can select from the units that remain. And just recall that you do have to remain eligible all the way up through closing, and SEB will stay involved for that purpose because there is a second update of your file that needs to be done to make sure that in the interim between the lottery and when you go to close on your unit, you haven't come into a whole bunch more money that would make you ineligible for this program. So if you are a household that's moving forward, you want to continue to kind of update your file and keep documents that are, your income and asset documents, because you're going to have to update your file about a month before closing on a unit. I will send you in the email with the waiting list that I sent tonight, I'll also send you a handout that has information about how many households applied and just some background information that I touched on here before I did the drawing. It'll also have how the waiting lists are compiled, just if you're curious. Paul, thanks for, so Paul McGovern from the development team was just emailing saying first unit likely to be available end of March, early April, second unit in the fall, and third unit by end of year, subject to change. Okay, so thank you, Paul. Looks like it changed from last we checked in, which is often the case. Paul and his team, if you are one of the households who gets to move forward, can update you on this. If you're not a household who gets to move forward in this process, that's unfortunate. I'm sorry. This is obviously a popular lottery with 30 households for only 3 units. We are doing other lotteries, both rental and homeownership. So if this one doesn't work out for you, don't be afraid to apply for one of the other ones that we're involved in. Thank you for everyone for tuning in. I'm going to hang out for a second if anyone has any questions, but hopefully the email that I will send this evening that has the waiting list, that has a handout with some of the background information, may kind of give you any other information that you need or want. And again, for households who have high waiting list positions, we will be in touch going forward with further instructions about the documents that you're going to need to submit to demonstrate your program eligibility. So I need to move in early June. Yeah, there's a number of things that are going to have to happen, to make that happen. I don't think the sales team, the developer, or SEB can make you any promises. I don't know where you are on the waiting list right now, and right now it's kind of step by step. You're going to need to have a high position on a waiting list, and then you're going to have to submit all the income and asset documentation, be approved, engage in the home buying process if you are one of the top households. I'm probably not saying this right, Sevelier, I'm sorry, but I understand your concern. I can in no way promise you, I can't even promise you you'll have the opportunity to purchase one of these units. So I think first step is probably seeing where you are on a waiting list. And that's kind of as far as we can take it right now. And then from there, you'll have an idea, if you're going to get invited forward, and if you'll even have an opportunity. And some of those timelines will come more into focus as we move forward, but they're way out of focus at this moment. Are there any other questions that households have? Everyone's good? All right, well, if you do have questions, you can always reach out to us at info@SEB Housing. Okay, so Coda Candy, if my number is in the first 9 number, that means we're going to be green color and move to the second step. Good question, and not necessarily. I don't know what it means yet. I don't know what household type you are, and I haven't made the waiting list yet, so I don't know yet. I'll make them in the next few hours. I'll send them to you, and then you will have to find your application number on the waiting list. It may be in green, it may not. I just don't know yet. Okay, so please be patient. A few hours. If you have email, I will send you those waiting lists, and you'll see where you are. Yusuf, all applications were type 3. No, there were some type 2 households who applied. So not every household was type 3. Any other questions? Anyone? All right. Well, if you think of something, like I said, you can always email us at info@SCB-Housing. Be happy to get your inquiries and respond to any questions that you may have. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for your interest in this lottery. Like I said, I will send the waiting lists and an email in the next few hours. And once you get those waiting lists, you'll be able to tell where you are and the when you may expect to get invited to move forward. If you're not in green, you'll have to wait for the households ahead of you to see what happens. If you are in green, you'll be invited forward to submit all the income and asset documentation to demonstrate your eligibility. Is local preference getting 2 houses and the rest are trying to get the 3rd house? All 30 households are on both lists. There'll be a local preference list and a general list. There will be 2 households that will get to reserve units first from the local list. Once 2 units are reserved and purchased from that list, or just reserved, that list will stop being used for the moment, and we'll go over to the general list to fill the other unit. Okay. Toda Candy, I have a question. Okay, sure. What is it? Just waiting for this question to come in here. If there are any others, please let me know. That mean that the green paste on the type? I'm not sure I understand what that question is asking. I'm sorry. Households in green will be invited to submit income and asset documentation right away by SCB-Housing. That's all that being in green means. Be invited to move forward right away. Given the all households in green, I'm pretty sure will be type 3 households, because all type 3 households will be above all type 2 households on both the local list and the general list. Does that answer your question? And if there are any other questions, please feel free to shout them out or type them out. Sorry, type them out. Okay, good. All right, I think that's it. So again, if there's something that you think of, some burning question that you forgot to ask, this isn't your last opportunity. Don't worry, you can email us, you can call us, be happy to walk you through it. But you should have a clearer picture where you stand in just a few hours when I send around this email with the waiting lists and the lottery night handout. Okay, so thank you again, everyone. Have a great night, and we will be in touch.